In Demand is brought to you by The Point,
Vasquez Jewellery,
Abraham's Vinny e Capricci,
Makeup Factory by Diane Nicholas,
Hairfection,
Join Well,
The Creative Partners,
Brave Media,
Clear Cut Media.
Good evening and welcome to In Demand. I'm Jane Dennis.
And I'm Trudy Kerr, and this evening we're talking women in the arts. With the fast approaching advent of Valletta 2018, the European capital city of culture, this evening we're going to be talking to two very prominent women in the arts here in Malta.
Tonight's guests are poet Maria Grech Ganado and dance pioneer Joanne Casabene.
First up, we're going to be speaking to Joanne.
So, Joanne, lovely to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
You're very welcome.
Nice to have you. Joanne, lots of people want to be, you know, children love ballet, they love being dancers. I guess it's something that you loved as a child. What was the difference between doing it as a childhood hobby to becoming a dancer as a profession?
I still live the dream. It's not easy.
No.
But I think the stimulus, the things that drives me, that keeps me going with what I do, is the passion that I have for what I do. Ever since I was a little girl, I wanted to be a dancer. I was fascinated by ballet. I was not introduced by anybody to ballet. In fact, you know, even my own parents sort of wondered why I chose to do ballet. And
really?
Initially, they used to laugh at me. I mean, not my parents, but my family, my cousins, everyone used to tease me. Those days, not that I'm that old, but it was not as popular as it is today to do ballet. Today, everyone sends their daughter to ballet.
Yeah.
Back in my days, there were 3 schools here in Malta, not as many as we have today.
Okay.
So it was not the norm to do ballet.
Wow, really? Because I always think of little girls, and
Yeah.
I think, you know, I wasn't a little girl who, I was a little girl that sort of went around on a bicycle and fell off and scraped my knee. But I had other friends who did, and I always thought that that was what little girls did. But you're saying that there was a period when that wasn't common here?
No, there were families that chose to send their daughters to ballet, but it wasn't as, not every family maybe. That's, I think if you look at an average family, possibly 5, 6 out of 10 families today who have girls do send them to ballet. In my days, it was possibly 2 out of 10 who went to ballet.
Was that lack of opportunity or was that lack of desire?
No, I don't think there was lack of opportunity because there was schools, but maybe it was not so much in vogue to do it, or possibly, which is still a bit of an issue today. I mean, there was not the option of eventually doing it as a career, which is, you know, a triggering factor why parents would send their children to dance. I was sent for violin lessons. I played the violin for 5 years, and there wasn't one class that I didn't fall on my violin on my way to the class, and hated every minute of it.
Right.
I love music, but I didn't want to play the violin. I wanted to be a dancer. And I loved playing with cars and riding bicycles and everything else. So it was very confusing for my parents, I think, to determine what this little girl wanted to do. But
well, I had two left feet, and that's why I kept falling off the bicycle. So you then, as a child, studied and went to ballet, and then chose that as a career path. So how did that work being here in Malta for you? Has that impaired your success, or have you sort of been able to enjoy more success because you're here in Malta?
okay, I'm not going to be embarrassed to say my age, but I think it's important to put what I will be saying in the right time frame.
Okay, yeah.
I'm 41 now, so I started ballet when I was...
She's 41. I've never
You look very good. Ballet's
Fantastic.
obviously good for the skin or something.
Not the stress, it's the makeup that does it. No, but I was 9 when I started. I wasn't that young because, as I said, I really started ballet because I insisted to do ballet. And when I turned 14, 15, by then I knew I really wanted to do dance. And at that point in time, there was no institution here where you could train professionally to become a ballet dancer. My ballet teacher, former ballet teacher, was Miss Tanya Bayona. She had a very beautiful school, but it only trained you on a, you know, up to a certain level. You could do it for certain hours a week. She run the school very professionally, but obviously to become a professional dancer, you need to do your full-time training, which means 6 to 8 hours of training a day. And there was no institution that could offer that locally.
No.
Okay.
So I still remember having these battles with my parents and insisting that I did want to do ballet and that this meant me having to leave Malta.
So what age were you when you were having this, you know, you were this little girl saying, I love ballet, it's not a hobby anymore?
I remember studying for my O-levels and already at that point saying, after my O-levels, I want to go abroad. And there was no way my parents would let me go at such a tender age.
So this is like 15?
That was 15. Yeah. And then I remember sort of making a deal with my parents. OK, if I go through my 6th form, my parents insisted that I needed to get my A-levels, then I would be able to go and study abroad. And we actually signed the contract. I wanted this on paper because I was really determined to go.
This is a woman who knows what she wants.
Was this over dinner? Sign that. Sign that.
So I remember then there were some... And again, at that point in time, there weren't any... It was very difficult to get scholarships to go and study abroad. And obviously this meant big money because full-time training always costed and still costs till today. Yeah. And maybe in those days it was harder because there were no funding opportunities. And the only institutions or establishments that helped with funding was the Italian Cultural Institute. But I was too young to apply for a scholarship because I was still 17 when I actually left.
Oh, my word.
You had to be over 18 to apply for scholarships that the Italian ministry gave. And when I was first year 6th form, there were applications for a university in Italy that, by some form of agreement with the Minister of Culture at the time, they were in a position to offer scholarships. And I obviously wanted to apply and... And
you got that because you had to do an audition and then...
Yes, we were auditioned. There were obviously representatives from the institution abroad who came over, auditioned us, and I was lucky to be selected.
So you were 17 at this point?
I was just thinking,
I was 16
so young,
at this point.
16?
And you went to Italy at 16 and were there for how long?
I was, well, just 17 when I left, because my birthday's in October, so I was quite young to be at 6th form. And then I left in September.
Goodness, and how long was that? How long were you there? And
my course was 3 years.
3 years.
And
so was that full-time there? You moved there?
Initially, my scholarship was for a year. It was for like what they call a corso di perfezionamento, which is like a polishing, a course you do intensive to polish you, to bring you up to the standard that you could audition to work for a company. And
so this is great. I mean, this is lovely. You had such a desire to do it, and then you've come back. And what made you not want to stay a dancer? So you had a great career as a dancer.
I did not choose to come back.
Oh.
I actually had already signed a contract for a company, and I was here on a holiday. And unfortunately, my father got a stroke, and it was a very severe stroke. So he was in a coma. I actually went back in October to hand in my thesis because I was still finishing off my thesis in the summer months. Gosh. And Daddy was still in hospital. And the family lifestyle, the situation changed completely. And I had decided to sort of take a sabbatical, stay in Malta till my father sort of, you know, recovers. He ended up being in hospital for 6 months.
Wow.
So much longer than we had predicted. And he actually lived for much longer than doctors had predicted.
Fantastic.
And in the meantime, when I came back, I started, you know, doing some freelance teaching. I never wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to dance. I wanted to be on stage.
But you're not just a teacher now. You've got your own dance school. I mean, that's an incredible journey. And why did you do that? What made you want to set up your own school? Is it because of what happened to you when you were younger, your experience?
Partially, yes. When I did open up my school, I think it was after spending a couple of years working for different people and maybe not agreeing totally with the way they ran a school. I mean, for me, running a school is not a business. It's passing on an art, and it's passing on something to a child which is going to change their life and have an impact on their nature and what they do in future. So I feel a great responsibility in that. Not only whether they take dance as a future career, but you're giving them something that can inspire them to other careers, but it's also in their character formation.
And that's something about the creative or arts sectors, is that if you do that for a living, what you do is something that you really enjoy in creating, you sort of do get into that bit where you're saying, well, it's not really a business, because actually I enjoy it and I have a passion and I want to pass it on. But of course it is a business as well.
Yes, and you have to be very clever how to run. I think I've always considered myself an artist and not a businesswoman, but you have to have a balance to be able to run a school, because you need to have a way to administer. However, I can say here that I don't think any artist in the past or in the future or currently is making the millions out of living with their art. I think when you choose to be an artist, it's partially a vocation. And when you run then your own institution, it's a lot of hours, of unpaid hours, where you give your students, you're constantly, you know, doing things, and the amount of research you do, the amount of time you spend looking for stimuli, and that's not paid time.
And where does that satisfaction come from? Is it because you're managing to develop young dancers, and that's where you go home and you say, I've had a good day today?
Yes,
because I found this amazing dancer.
It is satisfying, and it's also very frustrating. I've had how? Because I think Jane knows me, and she knows what a perfectionist I am in my work. And I'm very meticulous with what I do. The thing is, why I sometimes get frustrated is moments when you have a child who is talented, who can do dance, because they've got the physique, they've got the attitude, they've got the passion for it, and then you find parents who are not supportive of that.
Really?
And that is very frustrating,
That
because you would
me.
just want that child, she's got it. Let her do it, let her live it, because she can go all the way. And that, as a teacher, can be very frustrating.
Of course.
The other frustrating thing I find in my line is, as I said, wanting to do it professionally, and sometimes not being taken seriously by people locally, because dance is not considered a profession.
Sure.
And it's like, you know, it's okay, it's just a hobby, she doesn't need you. No, I believe even if they're learning it as a hobby, they have to learn what it entails and do it the professional way. Then if they want to take it up professionally, they can choose to do so. But at least even if they've done it as a hobby, do it in the right way, not in an amateur way. So amateurism frustrates me quite a lot.
Nicely said.
Listen, we're going to talk an awful lot more about the arts. We're going to also, in a moment, we're going to be talking to Maria Grech Ganado about her kind of art, and we're going to touch on some of the subjects that you've just raised there as well. So whatever you do, don't go away, stay with us, and we're going to be back in just a few minutes.
Discover the unique collections of Maison Tatiana Fabergé. Enjoy 25% off the entire collection this April, exclusively at Vasquez.
Makeup Factory. High-end makeup.
U l-plat kemm nitfawlu ftit għasel tal-oġiġja, Pawl?
Għasel ta' min?
Oġiġja, prodotti tipiċi għawċin. Minn ħwawar, melħ, zebbuċ.
L-aħwat nara u bajta u zjud, ħanajda kif taħt l-labtit, ħandu għalġoġ.
Nipruvaħ.
Veru tajbin, Għamlu bħali, improvajtom, provaw mintom u koll, oġiġja.
Trust earned over 20 years. A wide range of certified diamonds. Bespoke jewelry by our experienced goldsmith. Personalized experience throughout. An investment opportunity, or simply the opportunity to surprise.
Welcome back to In Demand, where we're talking to women in the arts. And I'm happy to say now we've been joined by Grech Ganado, the fantastic Maltese poet.
How lovely to have you on the show.
You can't even understand Maltese.
Well,
how do you know
that's why we've encouraged you to read a fantastic English poem that you've got.
Well, it's not fantastic, it's one that gets across quickly.
Lovely, so we'd love you to read that for us.
All right, it's called Day by Day. Today is Doctor's Day. Yesterday was Banks. Squeezed in between cooking, laundering, shopping, cleaning, and everything else a woman was really born to do. Like tending children who eat, play, run, scream, break china, practice strangling the dog, or cat if you prefer, and wheedle up to Daddy, who's late again, of course, would bear a whiskey on his breath, about just how mad Mummy has got, and what a crybaby she always was, and how it was she who smashed the plates against the wall, pulled off the teddy's head, still shrieking like a witch, "I'll tell Daddy! I'll tell Daddy!" An extra pair of eyes joins the reproach. It's quite some institution. So yesterday was Backs, and gratitude for money, whilst for the ulcer, varicose veins, and the general sorry state of Mummy's head, today it's Doctor's Day.
Fantastic! That was really lovely. And what was great was I was looking at Joanne sitting there nodding as you were going through some of those things. We were sitting there saying, yeah, I've been there. Oh, that was lovely, really lovely.
And fantastically unexpected as well. So when you came and said you were going to come on the show and read a poem, you know, obviously, and we'll come to that in a second about the sort of how poetry is perceived, but that was absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, I try to write, well, colloquial poetry and the kind of poetry which young people enjoy reading, although I've been told too many poems are too abstract for them.
Oh, OK, well, that wasn't abstract. That was,
no, it was really, really nice.
Exactly.
Explicit.
I choose this kind of poem to read, so it's immediately accessible, you know.
That's lovely.
Listen, you are an accomplished poet, and you've had your works published in over 8 languages, and we have the books with us this evening. Tell me, how did your career develop? How did your creative career go that way? Because it is quite unusual to meet someone either who's a dancer, dedicated dancer, or a poet. So how did that come about for you?
I started publishing quite late in life because it started seriously as therapy, though I'd been writing it practically all the time ever since I was a little girl. I think what happened, because I've been thinking about this before I came, was that I was fascinated straight away by rhyme in nursery rhymes.
Okay.
You know, I simply love them because of the rhyme. It's only lately that I realise what a lot of them mean.
Okay.
and then after that it was songs, if there were clever rhymes, you know. And I have an innate sense of meter. Now, it is something you cannot teach, really. I mean, you know, you try to teach meter, but you either have it or you don't have it.
Just for a second, just explain what that is. And this is what I'm presuming this is what, when you just read that poem, you read some of the parts.
The dum-de-dum-de-dum.
Exactly.
Yes, exactly. Well, the basic English line is the iambic pentameter, which does go da-da, da-da, da-da. And I tend to use it a bit too much.
Oh, do you?
The Maltese basic line is the hendecasyllable line.
Okay.
Oh.
Though, again, I play around with that a lot. And it's funny, you know, you should ask that, because very often the music of a poem comes before the actual words. I can hear it without the words, first of all, you know. Yes, I might have an idea, then the music comes, and then the words come along.
Okay.
That's really
so
interesting.
even I find it very interesting, because it's not like that with everybody, you know. So, you know, apart from the iambic line, English has different lines, you know, different meters, different. The spondi, you know, which is 2 short beats before the... no, that's 2 long beats, you know.
So
Sorry, I've forgotten the names.
Tell me why then poetry and not just other kind of fictional writing or prose. What is it about poetry? What's different? If, you know, for those of us who don't know the difference, you know, what is poetry?
Well, poetry normally condenses experience. It communicates something through the music in the gaps, as in music, you know, the gap, say, between a drum beat and another.
Right.
Okay? You can have poetic prose, as with Emily Bronte, for example, but modern poetry very often reads like prose. You know, it doesn't have to be full of, you know, terms with many O's, for example, you know. But it's, what is important about it is that it says something in a way which catches your attention a different way and can mean different things at different levels. So if you read it 2 or 3 times, as you progress, you see things which you hadn't seen before.
And I have to say, Maria, just as you were saying that, I was thinking, I don't know about you, Joanne, but just actually, and you, Jane, hearing you read the poetry, if I'd read that, if I'd sat there and read that, I would have missed out on all of the sort of emphasis that you put in there. And obviously, you know, you ladies sitting there going, yes, I know what she's talking about. And miss that sort of fun, the rhythm part of that. Really brought it to life for me.
Another thing about poetry is you might see things in a more complex poem than this, which I never even intended. You know, things like, I tell people, you know, one may write, you know, and in fact it was T.L. Eliot who said you can never come out with anything new, you know. When we eat, we don't stop and say, oh, there's the carrot I ate 2 years ago, or the cucumber I had 10 years ago. And in a way, this is where I'm lucky, because, you know, I had a very long and intense period of studying literature, and of course I was imbibing all this before I knew the purpose it was going to serve.
Is it because you were saying how you came to poetry almost as something that saved you? I think were your words.
Yes.
It's something that saved you, and you hear that a lot with art, that it's kind of therapeutic for people. But then it's supported by academic learning. You think that that's helped you to improve?
Definitely, definitely. Now there are creative courses. I never had one, and I'm glad. I mean, no, because, you know, people tend to repeat the same craft, you know. The really good writers, I think, never follow. It's good to have till you learn the discipline, the craft. But the real artist goes beyond this. He's got a vision. I mean, in any art, to communicate. And in fact, Yeats, in Sailing to Byzantium, says something, nor is the singing school but studying monuments of its own magnificence. And I, for one, can say that I loved poetry so much that where other people sang in the bathroom, I would recite poetry.
Really?
And if there was a word I couldn't remember, I'd get out and quickly go to the book to see what it was, because it meant that I hadn't looked at that word properly.
How amazing.
It's the interaction of words.
I've got a question. Listen, I'm as guilty as this as the next person, but I quite often think of poetry now as being quite sort of a female outlet for creativity, whereas over the last hundreds of years, the biggest poets have always been men. Is that true that now it's more geared towards women than men, or is it still something that men enjoy and take part in?
Yes, men do. It's still abroad, especially. In Malta at the moment, there are more women writing poetry.
Are there?
Well, there are men, but women write a different type of poetry.
Do they? That's interesting.
Completely. And there were in the classics as well, in the past abroad, I mean, Emily Bronte herself, who's my favourite writer, she wrote poetry, and then there were people like Christina Rossetti and Emily Dickinson, and oh God, I can't remember her name. I'm sorry, but my memory is not as good as it used to be.
Oh, that's fine. Don't worry about that. So, what's the difference then between a man's style and a female style?
Well, even the Pope said it. I mean, now in an institution which has been patriarchal for so long, even the Pope is recognizing that women have a different vision. We have a different vision. In fact, I never read it, but my sorry, I'm bipolar. So, my psychiatrist said, something, men are from Mars and women are from Venus, or the other way round. He said, it's very true, A doctor would say, it boils down to testosterone.
Oh, do you think so? Fantastic. Fantastic.
I think even words, but this is true of every different person. I mean, I might mean something by a word. I've got certain associations with it. And this is so with the individual. Every individual is like that. But then there is a common, what Jung would have thought a collective consciousness, I'm sorry I come out with all these.
No, not at all.
I love it.
Listen, I'm having spoken to you, Maria, and also to yourself, I'm suddenly understanding an awful lot more about both dance and poetry. And we're going to continue talking to you in just a second. We have to take a break, but don't go anywhere. We're going to be back in just a few moments.
U l-plat kemm nitfawlu ftit għasel tal-oġiġja, Pawl?
Għasel ta' min?
Oġiġja, prodotti tipiċi għawċin. Minn ħwawar, melħ, zebbuċ.
L-aħwat nara u bajta u zjud, ħanajda kif taħt l-labtit, ħandu għalġoġ.
Nipruvaħ.
Veru tajbin, Għamlu bħali, improvajtom, provaw mintom u koll, oġiġja.
Discover the unique collections of Maison Tatiana Fabergé. Enjoy 25% off the entire collection this April, exclusively at Vasquez.
Makeup Factory, high-end makeup.
earned over 20 years, a wide range of certified diamonds, bespoke jewelry by our experienced goldsmith, personalized experience throughout, an investment opportunity, or simply the opportunity to surprise.
Welcome back to In Demand, where we are talking to women in the arts, two fantastic women in the arts. So now we're going to speak to both Joanne and to Maria about the arts movement. Tell me, Joanne, how significant are the arts to Malta today?
Today? They're being given more significance, they're being given more importance. I think as a country, as a nation, as a culture, we have art and culture in our blood. We're very able people. How much we have been able to appreciate that we have this, and possibly in the past how much has been invested, is a question. Now we are, because obviously we have realized that we are way behind in certain genres and certain, you know, aspects of culture. We were, till a couple of years back, way behind other countries. And now within, you know, Malta being in Europe with 2018 coming up, and culture has been given, over the last couple of years, more importance. And we've done quite a couple of steps up this ladder, but we're nowhere near where we should really be. I still think there's a lot of work to be done. And as much as, you know, we've got to look at contemporary aspect and be in line with what sort of, you know, in other countries, maybe they're at this level. I feel we cannot just jump and go up to that level, but we need to go through the process that have let other countries arrive at that level. We need to do that process because that is a learning process.
And you can't, it's not something you can force it. You can't suddenly go from sort of limited creativity and arts to, way, we're all creative.
There are young people who think they can in my field. You know, they write... They write something, they think that just having a deep thought, which is stated rather than communicated, they think they're writing poetry. You know, so you have lots of young people who won't even brook criticism. And even if the criticism is positive criticism, you know, I mean, I have been accused on Facebook, because a lot of people send me the poetry. You know, once, you know, I tell them, look, I think if you omit that line or if that word or if you change it, you know. But in my intention is to help. I'm sharing. I mean, there are lots of people who put like and don't even bother to read the poem. You know, but I've been accused of somebody who scribbles, who thinks she can go around and tell others what they like or don't like, you know. Whereas I really think of it as immersing myself in what they're doing and helping out. So there are people who just jump and think that whatever they write, because they've had a deep thought or an intense sentiment, is poetry.
It's poetry.
You know?
It's interesting because you're talking about the arts and its place here in Malta, and one of the things that I've come to understand is that academic subjects, academic jobs and so on and so forth are very, very well regarded. And as you said, Malta's getting there, it's getting there slowly. But do you think that there is a place for, or are we not there yet, where the arts could be seen as a valid careers? And as you said, you've battled with that yourself, and
but we're moving there. I mean, dance and theatre are being taught, and creative courses.
Introduces dance and education. I mean, I remember days when I was studying overseas and I'd be here on a holiday and someone's asked me sort of, what are you doing? And I'm abroad and studying. And then, that's really nice. What are you studying? I'm following a ballet course. Oh. You know, there used to be that.
What will you do with it?
Yes, what are you going to do with that? I mean, let's not go far.
You can become a farmer.
I actually had a relative of mine who was a clergyman. He was a priest, and a parish priest, if you don't mind. And when I told him that I got the scholarship and I was going to do ballet abroad, it was like, you're a dishonor to our family because I was doing ballet, you know. It's like the mentality, but that was 20 years ago. The mentality has changed.
So now if somebody wanted to become a dancer or a poet, would that something people would take seriously now?
It's still a concern for parents that, I can talk about dance, that they cannot do it, that it's not an easy career. I mean, even overseas, you might be a very talented dancer, but job opportunities, there are more opportunities over there, but then there's more competition.
But parents mainly think about how they're going to earn their living.
Exactly.
Not how they're going to spend their life, but how they're going to earn their living.
Yeah.
And you were asking, I mean, prose now, there are publishers who publish prose and Maltese. But poetry, somebody told me that some new publishers are publishing poetry. Otherwise, all along, I've self-published.
So
because they don't sell poetry.
No, so we're sort of talking about the kind of economic reward for your art. Is there much of an economic reward for what you do?
As I said before, I think a lot of the hours of work that I put into my work, but again, I'm talking in terms of me being a director of a school, running my own school. I think I would be much better off if I were a freelance teacher and just go and do my lessons and then get paid for those hours and go back home. Being involved with my own school, then I do a lot of hours where, you know, I don't think I get the right remuneration for what I actually do.
I don't get a penny here. What happens is, you know, they published a monograph which is used for A-level Maltese. I was given, I mean, they said for two years, but it's over that. I was given 200 euros for it, and that's all I got.
Wow.
But apart from that, because my health is not too good, I can't go abroad. But while I could, I was invited here and there, and my trip was paid for. And Crusade was paid for. And unfortunately, by the time we got into the EU, I was already over 40, I think over 50, you know, perhaps. So a lot of young people...
Did that help?
Well, it didn't help at all, because the younger people who are under 40, they were helped a great deal. And even if they don't, you know, if they might not earn a penny selling the stuff, they're invited here, there and everywhere. One, especially a friend of mine whom I translated for, you know. But not so much the women yet. Recently, when they published something in an English magazine, the men were spoken about. And the women were spoken about.
Which is a question I was about to ask you. Is there a divide between men and women in the arts?
I got very angry.
Interesting, you've just said that the men were published, but I would always, as I said before, assume that...
they are published, but this article spoke about men's poetry and mentioned some men. And when it came to the women, I was mentioned because I'm neither, you know, I started publishing late, as I said, but none of the women poets were mentioned.
Wow, it's
I got
different.
because you're either a good poet, irrespective of gender.
I would have thought so.
It's different with dance, Joe. I mean, dance, if you look, sort of, ironically, if you go for classical ballet, you know, which really was triggered off by the passion that Louis XIV had for dance. That's, you know, we're talking back in the origin of ballet. And throughout the first 3 centuries of dance, it was mainly a man's world. And only later in the 18th century, women actually taken up on stage to perform, which is then when dance was actually introduced as an education, as a technique, and dance was codified and put together. After that, if we look back at the 19th century, especially in the mid-19th century, 1800s, we're looking at women going up, and ballet was mainly a woman's world. The men at that point had a secondary role. They were there to give the illusion that the woman was flying, lifting her up and turning her around.
Because they do have the easy role, don't they? They just...
even stories which ballets are created on, where originally were taken from poetry or stories where it would be a male character, the male character was changed into a female, because it was mainly a woman's world. Nowadays, we're looking at a century after, Even technique has changed to such an extent, whereas before, you know, women had the point work, men had the big jumps and the, you know, porter, the carry the woman. Nowadays, we're looking at contemporary dance. We've gone away from that sort of distinction, and both male and female have to very much be able to do each other's steps, and the abilities more leveled.
When Felix started with men, people laughed at them because they were sissies, because they wanted to go into dance.
Right. Do you think there's still that stigma with
There is
men?
that stigma.
Yes, but not as much as there was before. He's got a whole company now.
Not as much as there was before, but it's still there. I mean, even I as a school, I can tell you, I've got 4 boys in my school, but the rest are all girls.
Yeah.
They're very outnumbered. And I do admire parents who have boys who show an interest in dance and who take it. I myself have 2 boys.
Yeah.
My elder son used to dance. Then he was bullied at school and he didn't want to continue dancing.
It's funny, my son, as you know, he started ballet and he really wanted to, he enjoyed it. And he was only little, but he didn't get to a stage where he was bullied for doing it. He anticipated the fact that his friends wouldn't like it. So it never got that far, and then he stopped. But it wasn't because it had happened to him, but he just knew that it was going to happen to him. I mean, that didn't play out, so
I'm
it might
trying
not
to
be the
remember
case.
the name of that film. About the little boy who wanted to dance.
Billy Elliot.
There you go.
That's it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You know, 'cause
Fortunately, he was no Billy Elliot, so we didn't lose any sleep over it. But it's a shame. It was a shame. I liked having the boy ballet dancer.
Yes,
but,
yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it obviously, you raised the point in that film, so it's obviously an issue that is not subject just to Malta, but that sort of gender is all over the world.
With all the arts, I mean, dance in particular, there are, yes, it's a fact, there are male dancers who are effeminate. I mean, classical ballet dancers actually look effeminate even when they're not gay. So it does put that stigma on male dancers.
Laughing away there. Quick.
I've got one.
Well, yes, I'm a teacher. So but I prefer the word teacher to the word lecturer, you know. Lecturer, lectures. But I like to involve my students, but, or did, because, you know, when Felix started, he had 8 girls and 7 men. So my son, Chandru, who's definitely not effeminate, had offered to dance with them.
I can tell you he's not, because I've danced with your son, and I won't forget a time. I'm trying to be serious about this sad Spanish dance I was performing, and they were pretending, they were at 6th form, they were pretending to be playing cards on the table, and these cards had naked women on them, and I'm performing, and Chandra does this at me, and I'm trying to keep my serious sad widow. I was a sad widow.
Well, I brought them up to be very open-minded, you know. There are people you get on with, and it doesn't matter what the sexual orientation is, you know.
Of course.
So he actually enjoyed it, you know, when he was there, and people were going, "Oh, you're dancing with gays," you know, just to say, why not? I am, you know.
Oh.
But I mean, it's ridiculous about being effeminate, because even in ballet, they have to lift the women.
Of course.
I mean, there are a majority of male dancers who are not gay.
Not even
they might
gay,
look effeminate, but they're
Yes.
not gay. They're happily married. Some of them have family and kids. And in all the arts, I mean, you've got, you know, we don't tend to think, for example, of tenors as being gay, but there is a majority of tenors that are. Because maybe their role is more masculine in opera, you know, with ballet maybe because...
So do you think then, with what we're picking up there is, do you think that the arts are seen as an effeminate thing to do? So if you're a man and you enter art, but
they think of them as a hobby.
It's a hobby.
It's a hobby
And I
profession,
think
you
what
know?
it is when you're doing the arts, you're out for the public to see you. So if you are gay, you're being seen. Whereas someone who's in a house who is gay and doing nothing, and no one is seeing him.
But if we're saying that it's seen as an effeminate thing, and something that women like, are we saying
not
that,
only ballet,
no,
it's the
but in
arts in
arts, so the
general.
arts in general, is that then? Are we saying then that by it being effeminate or being female prominent, that's somehow a bad thing, and then that makes it something that's not to be taken serious? You think it's the feminisation of the arts that makes it?
In
not
2
taken
centuries
seriously?
ago, okay, it may sound like a very long time ago, but the attitude was that even female writers used male names.
Yes, yeah. George Eliot.
Of course.
You know, George Eliot wrote novels, but so did the Bronte sisters initially.
Absolutely.
You know, and other people. I think was it Schumann whose sister wrote a lot of music, and then he printed it as his, because, you know, it wouldn't... There's a film about this as well, Blue.
So do you
Blue,
think,
the film.
do you think that's the same now? Do you think from the past that that's still the same today?
No, well, it isn't, but as I told you, there was this divide, men's poetry and women's poetry, which abroad has disappeared. You might have a woman's vision, you know, a woman's, there's another word which I can't think of, approach to poetry, but I've lost that, because sometimes I read something and I think this must have been written by a woman.
Okay.
I don't believe that it is the arts that make you effeminate or gay or whatever.
No.
It's just as what I was trying to explain before. I think if you follow a lifestyle where you're open to the public and you've got a sexual inclination, then that becomes public and people can talk about it.
Of course.
But yes, there is a stigma on maybe people within the arts. But as I said, I think it's because it's not happening behind doors. It doesn't mean there isn't that same amount of society who are not into culture and the arts who are still.
Listen, I have a question for both of you. I mean, if you're obviously extremely passionate about the field that you're in.
If you could, about other arts,
of course. You seem passionate about everything, Maria. It's lovely. If you could have one vision for Malta, I mean, because we do have V18 coming and there is more emphasis, what would it, I mean, very briefly, what would you want Malta to see how Malta would develop in the next couple of years?
Age before beauty. I think that the arts communicate something which people need. They always think that spiritual means religion, okay, which has become a habit, a way of life. But the arts actually communicate a deeper vision into the human condition, which helps you, especially, my field is literature. You can learn so much from literature. I mean, history, sociology, psychology, philosophy, all this is contained in literature, and you're entertained as you go along. I read this, so it's not original, you know. We've learned how to go to the moon in terms of physical thing, but we don't get on with our next door neighbour.
Right.
I'm going to have to stop you, because Beauty's got to have a word in as quick.
I know, but she's been talking non-stop all the time.
Dave, I think you got the two women. You needed to get, someone else.
We need a longer show. We need a longer show.
That's why let me go first. Go on.
I'm not being conservative in terms of... I'm seeing arts and culture moving, and I'm one to support that. I'm one who have fought and dedicated her life for moving ahead within arts and culture. But I do believe as well that we have to keep a balance. I think there is, in terms of dance, and I love contemporary dance, quite a lot is being done on contemporary dance, but we've got to keep a balance, because I do feel that we are maybe neglecting a certain, classical dance.
Sure,
there's a lot of contemporary, and contemporary is a very vast spectrum, and I would like to see a bit more positive art, as Maria said. It inspires people. It has its effect on people. If you go to an art exhibition and you see a beautiful painting, you go home feeling maybe positive.
That's it.
If you go to an art exhibition and you see a disturbing painting, you go back home feeling a bit disturbed. I'm not saying that it's good to have, I want there to be a balance. That is my hope. There is a balance with what is coming out.
Absolutely. And ladies, listen, I want to say thank you very much. It has been wonderful talking to you this evening. I wish you all the very best with the dance. I'm definitely not something I'll be able to try, and I probably won't be able to do poetry either, but thank you very much for coming and talking about...
You can come and watch and you can read.
That's it.
I found the solution for you there.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you. You've been watching
Thank
In
you
Demand.
for having us.
Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Don't miss next week, where we will be talking about women in sport.
And if you want to see anything of that in between and find out more about these lovely ladies, go on to Facebook, facebook.com/InDemandTV Malta. Check us out there.
This has been In Demand. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week.
In Demand is brought to you by The Point,
Vasquez Jewellery,
Abraham's Vini e Capricci,
Makeup Factory by Diane Nicolich,
Hairfection,
Join Well,
The Creative Partners,
Brave Media,
Clearcut Media.